But today we are going to take a step back and break everything you need to know about corporate earnings down. Joining us to discuss is Chris Janeway, certified Plan Fiduciary Advisor and President at Fourth Point Wealth. Chris, so glad to have you here. Just after the bell, we're going to be doing a few earnings, and we do them a lot on this show. So this is a cool segment to kind of help those who aren't as familiar. Can you break down, I guess in your own words, in layman's term, what are earnings and why are they so important?
Of course. So thanks for having me. This is, I think it's a really important discussion. So for most people, right, the language and the speed at which information is coming out of the economy and day-to-day market news is a little over their head. So thanks for doing this. So corporate earnings, at the end of the day, it's just your net profits, right? So the mother's milk of the success or failure of a company is going to be their profit. So their net after tax profit is what the corporate earnings are. And at the end of the day, right, to grow, to thrive, to serve more customers, at some point, your company's going to have to be profitable.
And for those who stick around with us after the 4 o'clock, like I mentioned, we're going to do earnings there. We're going to talk about top and bottom line, revenue and EPS. Focus on EPS here. What exactly is earnings per share?
Yep. Earnings per share is my profits divided by the number of shares that are outstanding. So it's a huge factor in going into the price of a stock, right? If I have a profit and it's divided by 10 shares versus 100 shares, my price to those different shares that are outstanding is going to be a lot different.
Perfect. And then when we talk about earnings per share and the earnings report, obviously the next thing we talk about is the stock price. Can you break down, how earnings reports affect stock price? What happens historically when a company misses on earnings?
Yeah, this is where it starts to get to the gray area, right? So a lot more than just your earnings goes into a stock price, as most of us know. But earnings per share, right? The information that's coming out, that's the baseline of, is a company succeeding or failing, right? How did they do, whether that's backward looking in their earnings report? How did they do last quarter? What did they do relative to what they expected or projected? How about what the analysts expected? And then you can start to look at what they're projecting out for the future as well. But it's my measuring stick to say, as a shareholder or a prospective shareholder, is this company meeting up to expectations?
Yeah, and to your point there, typically when we do earnings, a focus for me is usually going back to the last quarter to see where the growth is. And the comparables, though, this year can be tougher than some historical years. When we talk about earnings season, that's a phrase we use a lot here on this show. Earnings season actually pops up a few times throughout the year. Can you break down, when do we typically see earnings season?
Yeah, earnings season's quarterly. So each quarter, these companies are going to have to come out and report, how have we done? What do we expect in the future, right? And so each quarter, they're able to communicate with their investors or prospective investors, again, what's going on within their company, how are they doing, what are the expenses, what are the new earnings, right? It's our measuring stick for the success looking backward over a short period of time, and we're able to compare that moving forward. Well, where is this company going? We compare that as well against their competition, right? How are they doing relative to their competition? Because obviously this last couple of years, COVID throws in quite a curveball to our mix, and it's getting harder and harder to compare some things. But when you can look at relative to competitors, it's a much easier determining factor in where that stock's going.
Lastly here, when you think about what investors should keep in mind during earnings season, what exactly is that? And then I guess, what impact do you see earnings season have on the overall market?
Yeah, it's important. So, we serve everyday investors, right? We're dealing with families saving for college, saving for retirement and housing. So the conversation in a tight little vacuum here gets really blown up. But for the everyday investor, they need to understand is there's a lot more than just earnings reports that go into a stock's price. And a stock's price right now is really not a thermometer for how is the overall economy doing in general, right? I think a great example, obviously, is the last couple of years. If we look at the stock market's return relative to maybe the strength of the economy, the stock market is based on expectations. Where do we think things are going? And a lot can be interpreted into that price. So as we get at earnings season, right, there's a lot more volatility, a lot more discussion. It's easy to jump in or out of the boat depending on the news that you're hearing. For most investors, they need to talk to their professional and sit down and really get educated on what do we think, and is this right or the wrong plan for me, because again, there's a lot of sandbagging, as we know, in earnings reports, right? So they're not going to set the target way too far out there and then miss on that all the time. So they like to set a pretty low bar for themselves. And there's a lot of information. Frankly, the information that we don't know is what can hurt us.
Yeah, just enough growth to satisfy you, but then not
That's
too
right.
much where you don't have a beat, right? All right, well, thank you so much. I think this is such a great segment for us to do to help people kind of understand, the average investor understand a bit of what we report on pretty often here. Thank you so much, Chris Janeway, certified plan fiduciary advisor and president at Fourth Point Wealth.